In my face-to-face coaching, I get a lot of people that ask me, Michele, how can I spot a narcissist? How can I be sure if the person that I'm dating or my next relationship, how can I be sure that I don't wind up falling for another narcissist? And one of the things they want to do in order to make sure that doesn't happen is they want to know everything about a narcissist. They want to be able to identify them. And I get it. There is a need to be able to spot toxic behaviors. We have to. That's part of the equation. But it's only a part of the equation. It's not the whole answer. Malignant narcissists are attracted to empathic and codependent people. It's like a magnetic pull, right? So identifying them is part of the equation. The problem that I see a lot is that people get stuck in wanting to identify the toxic person. So they identify toxic behaviors, they remove toxic people from their life, but the other part of the equation so that you're not attracted to another narcissist is you have to be willing to look at yourself and look and see if there are any codependent traits or characteristics that will attract another toxic malignant narcissist. And I've seen this a lot. I've seen people that grew up with toxic parents then find themselves in a relationship with a malignant, overt narcissist. They find out that they're in a toxic relationship. They find out what a toxic or what a malignant narcissist looks like, how they act. They get rid of that toxic relationship only to fall for a covert narcissist. Well, one of the reasons that happens is because they didn't change the codependent tendencies that they might have that would still attract the narcissist. So if you want to make sure that you're breaking that magnetic pull with toxic malignant narcissists, you're going to want to watch this video. Step number one in breaking through codependency traits or tendencies is breaking out of denial. And denial has an interesting way of creeping up into our lives. Some people that have come to me for coaching will tell me something like, okay, Michele, I notice these codependency traits, but that means I have to become a jerk in order to get rid of them. So there's a belief that letting go of these codependency traits makes them a bad person or an unattractive person. That can keep us in denial. We deny the fact that we need to look at ourselves. We deny the fact that there's some inner work that we have to do in order to make sure that we're not in another toxic relationship. Most codependents that wind up in a relationship with narcissists didn't even know what narcissistic abuse was. Didn't even know what a real narcissist or a malignant narcissist was. They thought that a narcissist was just someone that looks at themselves in the mirror. They didn't realize that there was this weird dynamic and power play that they were going to be involved in that relationship. So there was a lot they didn't know. However, once we get that awareness that the other person was toxic, there comes a point we have to look at ourselves. We have to see what we need to heal and fix so that we don't attract another toxic person in our lives. And the reason I say that is because like attracts like. And oftentimes underneath codependency is shame. There are some shame wounds. Well, in a narcissist, their core identity is shame. Like attracts like. So that's why we have to realize that there comes a point where, yes, it feels awesome to find videos that reaffirm our reality. It feels awesome to find videos that validate what we always suspected, but we were not allowed to talk about or acknowledge or even believe if we were in a relationship with a narcissist. So it feels good to get that validation learning about the narcissist. But then we got to take the next step, which is harder, and it's doing the inner work to heal those and breaking out of that denial. And in order to break out of that denial, we have to look at the beliefs that keep us in denial, such as, I would be a jerk if I changed, or letting go of codependency tendencies makes me selfish. So we have to look at the beliefs that are keeping us in denial as well. The second step to making sure that you break the energetic connection, or the energetic attraction, I should say, between codependency tendencies and narcissistic tendencies is education. A lot of adults that have codependency traits have them because they were raised in an environment where those traits were normal. Not only were they normal, but they were praised. If you put someone above yourself, if you denied yourself all the time for the sake of a toxic parent, and you were praised for that, then your idea of a normal relationship, your idea of what is healthy and what is unhealthy has been tampered with because of the idea of healthy and unhealthy in your toxic parent. And I see this too a lot in my face-to-face coaching with people that tell me, Michele, I didn't know what was normal. I didn't know I was allowed to have boundaries. I thought boundaries were bad. I thought boundaries made me selfish. I thought boundaries made me a person that didn't love their significant other or even their children. So the tampered views that were passed down to you by toxic parents, you have to learn and realize that that was not healthy. In order to know what wasn't healthy, we have to learn about what is healthy. And speaking about what's healthy, in my next video, I'm going to compare what interdependent relationships look and feel like with codependent relationships. So make sure you hit that bell icon to make sure you get notified of that video. So education is important. Starting to understand and learn and put into focus what a healthy relationship should look like, what it should feel like, how it affects a person, how it doesn't affect a person. That's definitely something that a person that was raised with a toxic parent needs to begin to really educate themselves about. The next thing that would be important to do if you want to make sure that you heal and fix and change your codependent tendencies is to become aware of your personal codependent patterns. Okay, so everyone is different, right? How codependency shows up in one person isn't exactly how it shows up in another, but we really need to be able to make it personal and see where those patterns are showing up in our life. And I'm going to explain why that's so important, okay? In my face-to-face coaching, I've never had a client that told me, Michele, I wound up with a toxic narcissist and there were no red flags, like none. Sometimes they'll start saying that, and then as the conversation goes on, they'll realize, they'll be like, oh, wait a second, I remember. There were a few red flags here and there. Even people with codependent tendencies normally can notice the red flags. However, a codependent tendency is to ignore the red flags. Why does that happen? Well, if you have codependent tendencies, probably as a child, anytime you went with your gut instinct, anytime you held on to your own perspective and it was different from a toxic parent, you were probably punished or shamed. Or anytime you said, I'm sad, and your parents said something like, oh, no, you're not sad. Anytime they did something that caused you to feel like you couldn't trust your gut instinct, well, you lost touch with self. You lost touch with your ability to trust yourself. So when you see the red flags, the codependent tendency is to ignore them. Another codependent tendency is to minimize or excuse the other person's behavior and project your good qualities into them. For example, when I'm talking to some of my clients, they'll tell me, when they're talking about the red flags, they'll say, yeah, I did notice this and I did notice that. And usually they're things that are like, really disrespectful or unkind, unthoughtful. And I'll ask them, I'll say, well, what were you thinking at that time when that happened? Like, what went through your mind? And they'll say something like, well, I just thought maybe he had a bad day, or I just thought maybe she just, was going through something at that moment and, it was just a momentary thing. So Obviously, no one's perfect, but if there are things that we're noticing in someone that are very unthoughtful, very unkind, very selfish, very self-centered, we want to notice and take note. Is this a pattern? Codependent tendencies will make you want to project your good qualities into the other person and minimize what you're really seeing. Another codependent pattern is to try to get our significant other to see our value so that we can then feel valuable. Almost like unless that person sees our value, like we need that person to validate our value in order for us to feel valuable, that's a codependent pattern. And it attracts narcissists because I need you to validate me. I need you to feel good about myself. Well, that's perfect for the narcissist because they're like, well, I want to control how you feel about yourself. And it's like the perfect storm. So the point is get to know your personal patterns. Look at your relationships, look at your decisions, look at how you are with yourself, how you are with others. What codependency patterns are in motion that are keeping you feeling the same way about yourself, seeking validation outside of self, and repeating the same relationships. Okay, start noticing them. The next step is harder. The next step is actually working through those patterns, or actually I should say breaking out of those patterns. And it's a lot easier said than done, because if you've been in a certain pattern for a long period of time, such as I'm going to say yes whenever somebody asks something of me, even though I don't want to, I'm going to say yes because I'm afraid of abandonment. I'm afraid if I stand up for myself, that person will reject me, or that person won't want to be with me, or that person won't think I'm a good person. Okay, so let's say that's a pattern in me. And now I'm in a relationship and the person asks me to do something that I'm not comfortable with, or maybe it's just that I don't have the time to be able to do it that day. Well, what will happen is the person with the codependent tendency will feel extremely uncomfortable saying no. It will be like all of these sensations going through your body as if alarm bells are going off, and you wind up either going into the trauma response of freeze or fawn, and you give in because the body sensations are overwhelming. Well, those body sensations are emotional flashbacks, and in order to break out of codependency, we have to learn to work through them. Now, I'm not giving the tips on how to do that in this video, but I'll leave a link to, somewhere up there, one of my videos that talks about how to overcome emotional flashbacks so that you can know how to work through it. And that step is really vital in breaking out of codependency tendencies, because if we don't break out of those tendencies and we keep doing the same things, we keep saying the same things, we keep repeating the patterns that are there, we will stay in the same kinds of relationships, we will stay in the same emotional state inside. It's not until we see ourselves doing things differently, it's not until we have different experiences that we're able to break out of those tendencies. So this is just one video on how to start breaking out of codependency so that you can stop energetically attracting narcissistic people. And if you want more personal assistance on your healing journey and the videos just aren't helping you to heal at a rate that you consider fast enough for you, make sure you check out my coaching services that are always in the description box below.